Hey, what's up, guys? Good morning. What's happening, YouTube? Thank you for tuning into Rules for Rebels. Got a little bit of a different camera angle for you guys today. I got my girlfriend's car today, and I don't got my window camera mount, so we're doing it like this today. But I wanted to talk a little bit about managing your own rental property versus hiring a property manager to do it for you. So, in talking with you guys and just kind of talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, it seems like developing a portfolio of rental properties is a lot of people's goal. If you get some kind of side hustle going, you got some extra money. A lot of people are interested in throwing that into rental properties, flipping houses, things like that. So today I kind of specifically wanted to talk about being a landlord, rental properties, and I'm definitely not an expert in real estate. I've been a landlord for about 6 years. I got one rental property. Right now I'm currently looking to get another. I've always had an interest in real estate, but it was kind of an accident how I got into being a landlord. I'd initially bought a foreclosed duplex, fixed it up, moved in there myself with two buddies of mine. They got their rent cheaper than they otherwise could have. I had somebody pay my mortgage for me. They pretty much paid the entire mortgage. I picked up the utilities, and we did that for a few years. It was a good arrangement. And during that time, I was really scraping by, so it definitely helped to have roommates, and all during that time, I was building equity as well. Well, fast forward a couple years into this, one of my buddies was moving out to move in with a girlfriend of his. My folks wound up moving down to South Carolina, and they had a lot more stuff. Their house was worth a lot more. The housing market was down, so they asked me if I would rent out their house, and I would rent mine, and basically help them out. They were only going to be gone for a couple years. They didn't want to sell. So I wound up doing it myself, right? No experience as a landlord, didn't really know what I was doing. I put an ad up on Craigslist. I think I had 2 showings before I rented the place out. One was, a guy in his 20s who was looking for a place. He came and looked at it with his mom. And then the second person who came and looked at it, it was a couple with like a 7-year-old kid. Signed a lease, got him in there, and essentially did everything myself, right? I figured out how to do credit checks on him. I figured out how to structure a lease, or I think I paid like Rocket Lawyer or something like that for a lease. Was charging him $1,200 a month, and things went really well. Aside from a couple small repairs, maybe a leaky faucet, new garbage disposal, never really had to do any repairs. They paid on time every month, and I actually found some service. I forget the name of it, but it was basically they would allow me to do an ACH transfer. So I basically sent a link to my tenants. They filled out this form with their banking details, so they didn't have to give it directly to me. And every month on the 1st or the 5th or whatever it was, it automatically did a $1,200 draw out of their bank account, and they charged me $3.75 for this service. So really, really cheap, right? So on a $1,200 rent, I was getting $11.96.25. You know what I mean? It was very, very cheap. And things went well, never really had any issues, so it's not like I had to take off work and go, meet a plumber over at the house or whatever. I think maybe one time I had to take an afternoon off to go handle something. Well, fast forward, these people's lease came up after a couple of years. They wanted to move to an adjoining town. Their kid was going to a private school or a Catholic school over there. They wanted to be closer, so they moved out, and I was kind of dreading having to get new tenants, but whatever, I did it before. So I put my ads on Craigslist and everything, and man, every single application I got was Section 8 tenants. Now, my house, it's not in a bad area. I mean, it's in I guess technically you could say it's on the wrong side of the tracks. I'm literally backing up to train tracks. But I'm in a really, really good school district, but I'm kind of in a dumpier end of town. And way back in like 2008 during the housing crash, there were a lot of foreclosures, a lot of short sales on my block. It's really weird. Like, the whole area around my house is pretty nice. My block is kind of dumpy, and basically a bunch of investors bought up pretty much the whole block, turned it all into Section 8 housing, and you definitely got some undesirable elements over there. So I had a break-in at the house, had a few other issues, but whatever. I was living there for a couple of years. Moved in there briefly while the house was vacant, and continued looking for a tenant. But like I said, everything was Section 8. I never run Section 8. I'd never been a Section 8 landlord before. I really don't like anything involving the government, especially involving the government in Illinois. Everything's kind of a shit show. Our state can't pay its bills, so I was kind of worried, like, if I get involved in a state program, are they actually going to be able to pay me the rent? And long story short, there's just a lot of rules you have to follow. There's Section 8 inspections and things like that. I really didn't want to be involved in any of that. So I actually wound up deciding I'm going to go with a property management company. So I researched some property management companies, found one. Because my house was a little bit on the cheaper side, a lot of times what they'll charge you 1 month of rent. So if your house is $1,600 a month for rent, they'll charge you $1,600 to find you a tenant. Because my house was a little cheaper, they actually only wound up charging me $250, which I thought was pretty reasonable. And then every month they charged me 10% of the rent and a management fee. So my house rents for about $1,400. 10% of that is about $140. So every month they charge me $140. So kind of the point of this discussion, I just wanted to give you guys kind of both angles of this. If you find yourself in this situation, you're a first-time landlord, I kind of just wanted to give you my perspective on, like, is it worth using a property management company? Am I happy with what they do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think using a property management company has wound up being quite a bit more expensive for me. Again, before I was paying $3.75 to collect the rent. Now I'm paying $140 to basically just have them collect a check. There is one positive to using a property management company, and that is, if a pipe burst at 3 in the morning, if a window gets broken, whatever it is, nobody's calling you up at 3 in the morning or on New Year's Eve at 11 o'clock saying, hey, I need this fixed. The property management company has teams on call 24/7 to handle that stuff for you. So again, my first time around, everything went really smoothly, and if I was using a property management company, I may have kind of felt like, wow, I'm really pissing away like $140 a month just to have these people collect a check every month. But the second time around, I've had a few issues, kind of some fluke things, but I'm really glad that I did have a property management company to kind of handle these things for me. So first incident, apparently there was a schizophrenic guy who'd been kind of milling around the neighborhood for a couple weeks. Police had gotten some calls about him. Well, one night, late in the evening, I don't know if it was 11 o'clock, 2 in the morning, something like that, he apparently, excuse me, apparently randomly picks my house to go bust out all the windows downstairs. So he starts throwing rocks through all my downstairs windows, busts out all the downstairs windows, takes a paver brick from my patio, throws it through the sliding glass door, goes into the house. My tenants at this point hear it. They go into the bathroom. They lock themselves in the bathroom, call the police. This guy's trying to bang down the door. Police show up, arrest the guy. I get a call the next morning at like 8:30 in the morning from the property manager. Hey, there was an incident at the house. I'm like, what the? There was an incident at the house last night. The windows are broken. We need to get somebody to board that up. So that was like $500, $600 to have them just go board it up. Then you got to have the insurance adjuster come out. They had to have a contractor out there to replace all the windows and the sliding glass door. And fortunately, I got homeowners insurance. They picked up most of the tab. I did wind up having to pay for the board up. I might have been able to fight them for that, but I wound up having to pay for the board up. $1,000 deductible down the drain. All of it got fixed, but not once did I have to go over to the property. I think I maybe had to have a brief call with the insurance adjuster, but that's one of the pluses of having a property manager. Is if I was managing the property myself, I would have gotten that call at 2 in the morning. I would have, at this time I was working for myself, but I'm thinking back to when I was still had my job. I would have had to try to take a day off work to get over there, to get a contractor over there, to get the insurance adjuster over there. I would have had to oversee the repairs, and it quite frankly would have just been a nightmare. Well, fast forward a few more months, my kitchen, the sink and everything is on an exterior wall of the house. So I get a call one morning, a pipe burst, there's water all over the kitchen, had to get a plumber over. There was a dishwasher connection that burst. I guess it got too cold. It was like, minus 15. With the wind chill, it was even worse. And again, that would have been another nightmare that I had to go over there and deal with. I've had a couple other small repairs. I think like a toilet valve was leaking, just a few other things like that. But I think with property managers, if everything goes smoothly, you're going to feel like you're wasting money. But it's those times when things do go wrong that it definitely helps to get to have a property manager, especially if you're working like a day job and it's a little bit harder for you to get away. So, I work for myself. I have a little bit more flexibility. I can very easily tell my business partner, oh, I'm going to bring my laptop and work for my rental today. I got to sit here with this plumber while he does this, that, or the other. But again, it's taking my focus away from the business and things like that. So I'm actually really fortunate. My mortgage is about $700. The property rents for $1,400. So I'm essentially about doubling up there. But that's one of the important things. If you're going to get into a rental, you got to make sure that you have a cushion. My business partner just he's building a house right now, and he was debating, like, with his existing house, does he sell it? Does he keep it as a rental? And we were looking at his house the other day, and pretty much his house is only going to rent for maybe $100 more than his mortgage is for, and so that doesn't leave very much of a cushion, right? If property taxes go up, there goes any profit he had. If there's any repairs that need to be done, there goes 6 months or a year worth of profits off the rental. So when you buy a rental, I think the rule of thumb from what I hear is you want to have like a 10% profit margin. I personally would like to have something a lot better than that. But yeah, if I had to do it over again, I'm not necessarily thrilled with the rental agency I chose, but I definitely think having a property manager is probably the way to go, especially if you want this to be more of a passive income or more of a passive situation for you. It is going to cost you money. And one other thing I wanted to mention, it's not as if I'm paying these guys $140 a month so that they handle everything for that cost. I imagine like contracts with property managers can be structured differently, but for both these repairs that I had, if I'm not mistaken, I think if there's a repair that has to be done, obviously you're going to have to pay for the repair, but they also charge me a fee to oversee the repair or to manage the repair, essentially for calling the handyman, for letting them into the house, etc. So I think on any repair over $150, they basically take 10%. So, in an instance when my windows got broken out, I think that was a $6,000 or $7,000 repair. 10% of $6,000 is $600. So they charged me $600 just to oversee that repair. So, I guess being a landlord can be more passive or more active depending on, do you want to take some of these responsibilities on in return for saving the money. So again, like I said, I'm not an expert. I just wanted to kind of share my experience with this. The reason I decided to make the video, quite honestly, I haven't really been paying that much attention to what kind of fees I've been being charged. I mean, I know the rental fee, obviously it's 10%. I know what that is, but I mean, every year when the lease comes up, they charge me $90 to basically for them to renew the lease. So there's some extra additional costs and things like that go into it. But I'm in the process of doing my taxes. I think I'm going to wrap it up today. I've been working on it for the past couple nights, which, by the way, really hope we go to like a fair tax or a flat tax model, because it's ridiculous how complicated and how taxing taxes are, pardon the pun. But I was working on my taxes. Obviously, I got to get all my expenses together for the rental property, and I was really kind of surprised to see, like, I paid in the past year, I paid $2,100 in management fees, and I think I paid probably another $2,000 and some change in repairs. Like I said, it was kind of a fluke year. Past 4 or 5 years, I never had to do anything to the property. This year I have that fluke incident of having the guy bust out all my windows, have a pipe burst, and then a couple other repairs. I also had a dead tree in the backyard that the city insisted I take down. And obviously they got to dig out the root ball and the root system and stuff as well. So I mean, that was $600. So it was kind of a fluke this year, but I think on my taxes, or I guess I should say my rental income was, just under $17,000. Probably $4,300 in expenses. So I mean, I'm still in the green. One other thing to think about if you're doing a rental, one thing to keep in mind, you owe taxes on all that money you're taking in, even if you're not necessarily seeing that money in your pocket. So I'll give you guys an example. Say you rent your house for $1,000 a month and your mortgage is $800 a month. In reality, there's only $200, $200 a month profit, if you have a rental agency or something coming out of that. But let's pretend you keep the full $1,000, you pay the mortgage, you're pocketing $200. So at the end of the year, you may think, well, I only made $200 every month. So over the course of the year, that's what, 2, 4, 6, that's $2,400. Well, no, you're building equity, your mortgage is being paid. So if you charge $1,000 a month for rent, you have $1,000 tax liability every month, obviously minus, insurance and mortgage interest possibly, and some of that type of stuff. But at the end of the year, I owe taxes on an additional $17,000, even though, in reality, probably only $7,000 of that is profit. So if you don't have that margin to kind of cover some of those taxes, in essence, even though, out of your pocket, you're going to be having to pay money to cover these taxes, in essence, when you eventually sell that property down the road, you're going to get all that back, because you've been building equity in it. But 100% of what you're charging is taxable income minus your expenses. So don't think, just because I'm only profiting $100 per month over what the rent is, that you're only responsible for that $100. You're responsible for the entire rent you collect. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But this year definitely wasn't nearly as profitable as previous years. I still am in the green. Hopefully, going through this year, we have kind of less incidents, nothing crazy happening like that. Hopefully a furnace and AC doesn't have to go out. I think I got a new furnace, so the only thing that could go out with is an AC. But overall, I've been happy with my experience being a landlord. It's been profitable. But this time around, as much as it sucks paying the fees, as much as I'd love to have that extra, couple $1,000s a month in my pocket every month, it's definitely come in handy not having to deal with all the repairs and be on call for all this stuff. And I think there was one other thing I wanted to mention so here's the other thing I found with using a property manager is, by no means am I a slumlord. Like, I want to provide people a nice place to live, but at the same time, when you're a landlord, you kind of have to decide, like, how nice do you want to make the property, long story short, like, the entire time I was living in this house, I didn't have a garage door opener, right? I don't park in the garage. I used it for storage. I never really felt like putting it in. Well, as soon as I hired this property, if I were renting the place myself, I wouldn't have put a garage door opener in. The property manager insisted, if we're going to rent this place, someone's going to want to have a garage door opener. So, I got to pay $450 for a garage door opener. There were a couple little other things like that where, like, I lived without it for a number of years, but you get a tenant in there and you have to do these things. So, those kind of things were an additional cost. I never bothered to, quite frankly, maybe I should have known this, but the city I'm in, they charge you $100 a year to rent out your house. It's basically, you got to get a landlord license, so to speak. I never bothered getting one. I never really knew that you had to get one. I know in a lot of communities, like, maybe if you have over four properties or over 6 properties, they consider you like a full-time landlord, and they maybe require you to register with the city or something like that. A lot of the cities that I've been in before, if you only have 1 or 2 properties, it's kind of considered more of a mom and pop operation, and they don't charge you. Well, because I'm using a property management company, they made me, they obviously made me get the license. So that's $100 every year that goes down the drain, just for doing that. So I've noticed that when you use a property manager, obviously everything's going to be done by the book, and you're going to maybe incur a few more expenses that way as well. Like the example of the tree. I got this small dead tree in the backyard. It wasn't even dead. It was probably dying, but I probably would have left it there because I'm using a property manager, and because they're going through the city, they required me to take it out, and not just to saw it off at the ground level, but to dig the root ball out. So, there's another $600 that I probably wouldn't have paid or wouldn't have had to pay if I was doing it myself. Whereas because I'm using a property manager, I had to do it. And there's just a few other instances like that. So, I think I'm probably going to keep using the property manager. Part of it is once you start using them, you're kind of locked in. You know what I mean? Like, I suppose I could fire them and continue renting the place out myself, but it's like they have all the contacts at Section 8. They have all the contacts with my tenant. The way most property managers work, their name actually goes on the lease, and that's done on purpose so that if the tenant has issues, they can't see your name on the lease and be calling you, bothering you, right? Their contact person is the property manager. So, for all intents and purposes, my tenants don't even know that I exist. They don't know who I am. So it just seems like it would be a lot of legwork for me to have to kind of take everything over from them. So, I think for that reason alone, I'm kind of tied into to this property manager, at least for the life of these tenants. If these tenants wind up moving out, I may wind up kind of going it alone and doing it myself. But that's my little ramble about, renting a property yourself versus using a property manager. Like I said, I'm far from an expert. I got one rental property. I have been doing it for about 6 years. It's something I'm looking to educate myself on further and continue developing a portfolio of rental properties, and I'm actually working with a realtor right now to do that. But it is kind of intimidating, right? Like it's not like starting a drop shipping store where if it doesn't work out, you can walk away and you're out $100. Like it's kind of a big commitment to buy a property. You need a lot of money to put down. It can be a little bit more confusing and a little bit more complex. So I'm curious to hear from you guys. Do any of you guys have rental houses? Do any of you guys have rental properties? If so, do you manage them yourself or do you use a property management company? Curious to hear your guys' experiences. Curious to hear any stories that you guys have. Maybe some of you guys have some nightmare story with a tenant who destroyed your place or whatever else. Drop a comment below and tell us all about it. Until next time, guys, Rules for Rebels signing out.